Over the past few months, tensions have further escalated between Russia and Ukraine, leading to several deadly strikes from both sides. On September 7th, Russia launched one of the largest drone-plus-missile strikes, sending over 800 drones and missiles towards Ukraine. The strike targeted multiple regions including Kyiv, Odesa, Sumy, Kharkiv, and Poltava. Ukraine, in response, increased its operations against Russian energy infrastructure, including oil refineries and fuel supply lines. Strikes continued, tensions grew, and now, the Russian Defense Ministry has come up with astonishing news. They have claimed to kill 1,500 Ukrainian troops during a recent advancement. This strike is not just another chapter in the war. It may be a turning point. Now, the million-dollar question is, how will NATO react? Will it hold back, or will it strike? This is the story of Russia's deadly Kyiv strike and the decision NATO should make now. In the past few months, Russia has increased drone and missile strikes on Ukraine. On September 7th, Russia hit Ukraine with the largest air attack since the war began. 4 people were killed and several buildings were set on fire. The strike included 810 drones and 13 missiles, causing damage across the north, south, and east of the country. Russian Prime Minister condemned the strike and urged the world to take action. The world must respond to this destruction not only with words, but with actions. Russian forces have been advancing continuously to expand the boundaries all across the Eastern Front in order to create a so-called gray zone. Another prominent Russian strike in Kyiv was observed on September 28th, when Russia launched a major drone and missile attack on the Ukrainian capital and the surrounding region. The strike caused the deaths of at least 4 people, along with 14 injuries. The brutal strike continued for at least 12 hours. The strike was carried out using nearly 500 drones and more than 40 missiles, including the Kinzhal missile. Russian-Iranian Shaheds were also part of the strike. This strike was also regarded as one of the biggest since the beginning of the full-scale war. But infrastructure is not the only victim of Russian strikes. Russian attacks in the past few days have resulted in the power cutoff of Ukraine's Chernobyl and Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear plants. According to Kyiv media, the Chernobyl power plant lost power after Russia shelled a nearby substation in the town of Slavutish. The shelling also led to more than 3,000 people losing power in the nearby Chernihiv region. The incident came 8 days after the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in southern Ukraine also lost power. A situation Ukraine calls critical, but Russia says is under control. Ukrainian president called it a deliberate attack, highlighting the risk of nuclear incidents. And now, according to recent reports, the Russian military has carried out an intense operation on the front lines, leading to deaths of at least 1,500 Ukrainian soldiers. The media says, Putin's heavy assault cripples Ukrainian front line. The Russian Ministry of Defense has claimed to destroy 200 Ukrainian tanks, US-made Bradleys, and 142 drones. They have claimed to surround Ukraine's eastern edges from all corners. This is a massive strike, and the damage is even bigger. Loss of 1,500 troops is damage not easy to swallow for Ukraine. According to Russian reports, the strike was carried out by Russian forces in all frontline areas for over 24 hours. And it was not just Ukrainian soldiers killed in this operation. The Ukrainian army has also lost much hyped Western weapons. According to the Russian news agency TASS, the Ukrainian army lost a large number of troops, weaponry, and fighting vehicles in every corner during a 24-hour period. It is a massive blow to the Ukrainian army. Battle Group North units destroyed a mechanized brigade and a Jaeger brigade of the Ukrainian army near the areas of Novaya Sek, Sadki, Spasskoye, and Varachino in the Sumy region. Russia's Battle Group West caused the deaths of 230 Ukrainian soldiers and destroyed US-made HMMWV armored vehicles. The South Group inflicted almost 235 casualties on Ukrainian troops and destroyed 2 Western-made armored combat vehicles. Central Battle Group inflicted casualties on 515 Ukrainian troops and destroyed 2 US-made Bradley fighting vehicles. Every Russian unit advanced, causing severe damage to Ukrainian troops and weaponry. The East Group killed 295 Ukrainian troops and destroyed 2 enemy armored combat vehicles in its area. Troops and weaponry were not the only targets of Russian forces. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, Russian forces have also struck the transport infrastructure of Ukraine's military-industrial sector, long-range UAV assembly, and storage sites in just 24 hours. Russian air defense also shot down a rocket of US-made HIMARS multiple launch rocket system and 142 fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles. Ukraine has not confirmed the Russian claim of killing 1,500 troops yet, but the message is clear. The war has entered an intense phase. Russian forces are advancing with no intention to step back. Since the start of the special military operation, the Russian forces have been successful in destroying 667 Ukrainian warplanes, 283 helicopters, 87,644 unmanned aerial vehicles, 25,327 tanks and other vehicles, along with 631 surface-to-air missile systems, almost 1,600 rocket launchers, and 30,000 artillery guns and mortars. These numbers are shocking, showing severe damage caused by Russian strikes. Russian invasion and strikes have proved fatal for Ukraine. Whether it's their infrastructure, power plants, or citizens, damage has been consistent and severe. After one Russian strike, while condemning loss of civilian lives, Ukrainian Prime Minister said, "We will restore the buildings, but lost lives cannot be returned." Russia is not just focusing on military sites. It is attacking everything it lays its hands on. But Ukraine is also not holding back. On a number of occasions, Ukraine has counterattacked, causing damage to Russian oil refineries, pipelines, and supply depots. Ukraine also carried out a major attack on the Russian port of Odesa in August, using a long-range UAV drone. The attack targeted a major cargo vessel carrying Shahed drones. These operations are designed to flip the pressure back on Moscow, forcing it to defend its own critical infrastructure. But Moscow is not holding back. With every strike, it comes with more power, leading to more damage. For Kyiv, these strikes have proved a major blow, but for the Kremlin, it is a show of power. Now, the question is, what is the part of NATO in this war? What role should it play, and what things it must decide now? When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, Ukraine stood alone on the battlefield, but not without allies. From the very first day, NATO has backed Ukraine. NATO is a military alliance consisting of 32 members. Ukraine is not a NATO member. But being a close partner, it has continuously shown its support for Ukraine. Now, the survival of Ukraine is a test of NATO's credibility. If Russia succeeds, NATO's deterrence in Europe can collapse. That's why NATO's role has been so critical in this war. Some of the NATO members have continuously supplied Ukraine with tanks, drones, and advanced air defenses. Moreover, NATO states have also played their role in training thousands of Ukrainian troops in Europe. Military equipment is not the only support provided by NATO countries. NATO members have pledged hundreds of billions of dollars in aid. They have also helped in tracking Russian movements through their surveillance assets. While supporting Ukraine, NATO has moved troops eastward to deter Russia. Battle groups are now stationed in Poland, Romania, and the Baltic. Without NATO's backing, Ukraine might have collapsed early in the war. Initially, Russian forces were overwhelming, but NATO's weapons and training enabled Ukraine to push back advancing Russia. NATO is the main reason Ukraine can keep resisting. But with increasing Russian strikes and advancements, NATO is facing a dilemma. On one hand, it must support Ukraine enough to prevent its collapse. On the other hand, it must avoid a direct confrontation with Russia that can spiral into a wider war. So, NATO takes every step with utmost care, precision, and calculation. Even after this much calculation, some NATO countries like Poland have faced drone incursions from Russia. Although Russia has claimed it was an accident rather than an intention, it has created chaos among NATO members. After the drone incursion, Poland invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty, consulting with its members on the security of the country. However, Russian President Putin said that it is impossible to believe that Russia would attack NATO countries. He said it is nonsense and it would contradict Russia's security interests. But the question is, what should be NATO's next move now? Although NATO has avoided direct confrontation with Russia, it is sending a clear message at every moment that NATO is backing up Ukraine no matter what. According to a report, the United States will provide Ukraine with intelligence on long-range energy infrastructure targets in Russia. The U.S. is also considering sending missiles to be used in these strikes. Ukrainian president said, "This would be a significant boost to Ukraine if the U.S. provides it with long-range weapons and intelligence." Moreover, the U.S. is also asking NATO allies to provide similar support to Ukraine. If NATO agrees to this, it can be a turning point in the war. At the same time, NATO continues to strengthen its eastern flank. The NATO Secretary General said that action to protect the eastern border would begin in the following days, involving military forces from Denmark, France, the United Kingdom, Germany, and others under the name Eastern Sentry. This is a warning that if Russia dares to expand the war into NATO territory, Article 5 will be triggered, and Moscow will face 32 members at once. NATO's next move will be of huge impact, but the decisions should be made now. Should the alliance give Ukraine long-range weapons that can reach even deeper into Russia? Should it provide more advanced aircraft, like F-16s on a larger scale? Or should NATO limit support, fearing that this escalation would turn into a direct clash with nuclear-armed Russia? The choices made now will define the war's next chapter. Russia has already warned that Western weapons striking deep inside its borders can trigger unpredictable responses. Now, if NATO takes a miscalculated step, it would escalate the war beyond Ukraine's borders, drawing NATO into a confrontation it has tried to avoid till now. And if NATO hesitates, it would embolden Moscow to not only further cripple Ukraine, but also test NATO's unity and resolve. For NATO, this is a challenge now that will decide the outcome of the war. The war in Ukraine is no longer just Ukraine's struggle. Every missile and every decision ripples across Europe and beyond. NATO's next step will not only determine Kyiv's survival, but also the balance of global power. The path chosen now will echo for several decades to come.